Excerpts from the chapter Embodied Spirit. Perhaps nothing concerning Maharajji is more mind stretching than the manner in which he related to the physical universe, especially to his own body. Although at first glance his seemed like an ordinary human body, and he seemed to go out of his way to prove that it was. There was ample evidence not only that it was not ordinary, but indeed extraordinary beyond comprehension. When I think of him now, I remember his hands, not just holding his hands, but watching the way they moved. His fingers were very flexible yet full of strength. When he was not using his hands, they were completely relaxed and open, completely flat. The tips of his fingers had an unusual shape. More than his face, I remember his hands. He was spontaneity itself. He would assume amazing postures. He flowed like the Akash. He seemed totally fluid. His flesh had an amazing quality to it. It had a glow and a softness that was unusual, like a baby's skin. Sometimes the beauty of his body was so startlingly radiant it took your breath away. In the July heat of Vrindavan before Guru Purnima day, he came out wearing only a white dhoti, and all I could think of was the description of Hanuman in the Ramayana, a body shining as a mountain of gold. I always expected to see him wrapped in his blanket. One day I came around the corner into the room, and there he was, with only a sheet around his waist and legs. It was one of the most shocking things I had seen in my life, though it wasn't frightening. I don't know why. I had seen photographs, but I wasn't prepared for seeing the vastness of who he was. Another time I saw him sitting outside on the tucket with just a sheet around his waist. This time he seemed to me to be like an infant. Here was this massive being who looked like a delightful little baby wrapped in his diapers and playing. My mother and aunt snuck into Maharajji's room when he was out taking a bath. They caressed his blanket and put it to their faces. Afterward, they could only talk about how it smelled like a baby's blanket. At times he seemed fat and at other times thin, sometimes tall and sometimes small, now heavy and then again light, and his joints didn't function like ordinary joints. Not only did he outrageously manipulate his own body, the one with which we were familiar, but he apparently took on other bodies at will. Once I was alone in the night with Maharajji. We were in Brindavan. He said to me, "Okay, you take me for a walk." Maharajji had such a massive body, and I said, "Maharajji, how can I take you for a walk?" But he insisted. I put out my hand, palm up, and he put his forceful weight on my palm. I said, "Maharajji, you are too heavy." He said, "Is that so? Then you put me somewhere." So I found him a place to sit for a while. Then he said, "Now you take me again." And this time I found he was very light, much lighter than a baby. From that day onward, the feeling that he is walking beside me is still there. When they wanted to make the Murti of Maharajji after he left his body, they came to me asking for some photo of him, the best one for a Murti. I told them that I had known Babaji for so many years and had many hundreds of photos, no two alike. And Babaji himself, sometimes he was short, sometimes very fat, sometimes quite slim. I have never been able to know which was the real Baba. You could give him any form you liked, but he could not be captured. He was like the air. Once you can allow for these phenomena that Maharajji manifested with his body, it is difficult to return to your concept of him as an ordinary mortal. But he put up a good fight to convince us of just that. He demonstrated some vanity, illness, aging, though the stories below suggest some confusion on that, and ultimately death. But for the devotees, all of this was just more of his play. When Maharajji visited us on one occasion, he noticed a picture of himself in which he is laughing and in which his beard is quite long. He began abusing me, asking why I hadn't told him his beard had grown so much. Why hadn't I had him cut it? Now, he said, it has ruined the whole picture. During an evening darshan in Kainchi, Maharajji had been in the back with the mass, who had just finished doing puja to him. He came out and sat on the tucket. He looked perfect, the most handsome, regal being. He had just been shaved and had a perfectly centered, round yellow tilak on his forehead. He sat down like a king, and we sat before him in silence for a long time. He seemed to be saying, I am so good looking. One day Maharajji complained that he had a cold and needed socks and medicine. KK laughed and said, Oh Maharajji, there is nothing wrong with you. Why do you try to fool simple people like us? Like a child, Maharajji laughed as if he had been caught at a trick, and soon he was better. In Vrindavan, Maharajji was really sick. He'd been taking heart medicine for 2 years because he'd had several heart attacks. Sometimes when he was sick, he would call for me, and one such day we entered to find him sitting on his tucket. In front of him on the tucket was the largest handkerchief I've ever seen, with which he kept blowing his nose. He was a very funny caricature of a man with a bad cold. He said, Oh doctor, I'm terribly sick. Won't you give me some medicine? I said, Yes, Maharajji, and I asked him about his symptoms. I decided he had a cold, so I ran out to the bazaar and brought back in 3 separate packages homeopathic medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and Western medicine. I pointed out each one to Maharajji. Here's the homeopathic medicine, here's the Ayurvedic medicine, and here's the Western medicine. He threw aside the homeopathic and Ayurvedic medicines and said, This is the medicine I want. And he gobbled up the vitamin C, the aspirin, and the Dristan. Very often he'd say to me, You know, Western medicine is very good. And he'd call me Dr. America. A doctor who had met Maharajji at least 25 years earlier came to visit the Baba. After 15 minutes, Maharajji said, I have a pain, doctor. Will you massage my leg? The doctor began massaging using oil and then said, I've seen many old people and they stiffen, but there is no change in your nerves. In fact, your body seems younger than when I knew you in 1942. Maharajji said, Go, these doctors are fools. After all, one is born, he has to die. A saint told him about nerves. What does he know about nerves? And Maharajji sent the doctor away. A woman once told Maharajji, My relative's wedding is approaching. Maharajji, you'll have to attend. Maharajji said, I'll go to it. And he did, but not in his usual shape. He told her at the wedding that he was very hungry, and when she asked what he'd like to eat, he replied, Kheer, nothing else, bring kheer. She brought kheer, and when she went to bring some more, he disappeared. Some time afterward, when she again met Maharajji, she rebuked him for not attending the wedding. He shouted, No, you fed me kheer yourself, but you didn't bring me kheer a second time, so I ran away. I had you there. The great sadhus don't have a human body. They are omnipresent. If a saint changes form, he doesn't necessarily have to take on a human body. The soul is the small form and the human body is the huge form. In 1962, an old woman came for darshan of Maharajji. When she saw him, she exclaimed, How can Neem Karoli Baba be alive? He must have died a long time ago. My father was a devotee of Neem Karoli Baba, and my father said he knew Baba for 40 years before that. I am 73 now. I last saw Baba when I was 7 and he didn't look any different from the way he looks now. Maharajji upbraided her and wouldn't let others speak with her after that. Maharajji once said, I used to come here to see that fakir who rides on a horse, that Gorashin Baba. Gorashin Baba lived some 300 years ago. Once in Lucknow, an 80-year-old Muslim arrived, who said he had known Maharajji as an adult since he himself was 10 or 15 years of age. Maharajji said, Don't believe him. Another man of over 80 years said he knew Maharajji almost 70 years before, when the man was 20 years old, and that Maharajji had given him his blessing to take his first job. Several people were once discussing a saint who had lived some 500 years earlier. Maharajji said, Oh, I knew him. In 1961, Maharajji made a pilgrimage to Chitrakoot with several devotees. While there, he stood on the banks of a river and kept shouting across it for a certain Gopal, a shepherd. Over and over he would call for him. No one knew of such a man, but Maharajji said that Gopal was a friend of his who would bring him many things. After much inquiry, it was discovered that 4 generations back there had been such a person who was devoted to such a guru. Gopal's grandson was eventually found, and he was a very old man. Excerpts from Maharajji's teachings about attachment. Maharajji gave no formal teachings, yet his every manifestation, every word, glance, gesture, movement taught those of us who were open to him in ways that often bypassed our intellect and were heard directly by our hearts. Many topics came up in Maharajji's dealings with his devotees: truth, money and poverty, anger, drugs, sex, family and marriage, pilgrimages, rituals, saints and sadhana, service and surrender, and, of course, love. In Maharajji's infiniteness, we found messages about all these matters, messages to guide us, not always without confusion, on our journey back home to God. Because Maharajji, in his mirror like way, responded from moment to moment to those around him and to their unique karmic predicaments, someone seeking a general teaching about a topic through a collection of his utterances and the stories about him would undoubtedly be confused. At one moment he would say one thing, and a moment later the reverse. But each person was on a different stage of the journey and thus needed a different teaching. And in this river of contradiction that flowed from him, in these teachings that are no teachings, there is more profound guidance than a simplistic do this and do that. There is the continuous reminder of the existence of the Spirit, and that what appears to us in this world is not as it seems. To see, to hear, even to know about such a being who is in the world but not of the world is more than teaching. It is grace. Maharajji was talking in a room with only a few people, and to one man the talk appeared meaningless. He said, Babaji, you should give instructions and lessons to people. Maharajji didn't answer. Sometimes, the man went on, give us answers and teach us something. Again, Maharajji didn't answer him. The man repeated his statement a third time. Obviously irritated, Maharajji shouted, What are the instructions? What is this? What are the lessons? This is all foolishness. Lessons. Turning to the men standing there, one was a goldsmith, one a shopkeeper, one a clerk, and one a teacher. Maharajji asked each how he would pass the following day. Each man gave a similar reply, saying he would go to work as usual, would pass the day in his habitual manner. Maharajji said, So many people are here, and they'll all do what they have to do tomorrow, and they have all pre-planned it. What's the use of giving a particular teaching? You'll do what you want. So what are teachings? There is no use forcing anything on anybody. No matter what I say, you'll still do what you want to do. Yet, you want me to dictate something. These teachings have got no meaning. There is no use in teaching people. It is the Almighty who teaches everybody. They all come well taught. There is one supreme teacher, and he has taught everybody. Teachings are nothing. One who poses as a teacher does so only to satisfy his own ego. In 1970 or 71, K complained, Maharajji, I have been with you all this time and I haven't learnt anything. Maharajji replied, All right, I'll tell you. But he always avoided telling him. Once a mother came to Maharajji and said, Maharajji, you always talk about worldly things. How many children, how much education, which job, how much money. Why don't you teach us about Brahman, the formless? Maharajji said, Okay, I'll teach you. The mother went off to do her work at Kainchi, and when it was time for the last bus to Nainital, she was making her pranams and was going to the bus. Maharajji asked her, Now are you going? She said, Yes, I have to attend to my family, prepare meals and all. Maharajji said, Listen, don't go just now. I'll teach you about Brahman. You sit here. She insisted she had to go home and look after her family. He said, No, no, I'll teach you about Brahman. You sit here. Don't go home today. How is it possible? I must go. But first you wanted Brahman, and now you ask how it is possible? After she left, he said to me, Look at her. First she was talking about Brahman, and now she is thinking about home. One person cannot do two things at one time. Brahman is not a thing, a toy that you can play with. You have to sacrifice something. Maharajji always allowed people to do what they wanted and would seldom tell anyone not to smoke or drink. He never lectured a person but would arrange the circumstances whereby he or she would want to give up a habit. Regarding one devotee's habit of drinking liquor, Maharajji commented, What friends do is all right. M had a betel habit, but would chew only the finest quality. Once, when I was going to Nainital, M gave me 2 rupees for betel, and Maharajji found out about it. The next morning, a lady brought betel for prasad to Maharajji, not a frequent occurrence. What's this? Maharajji asked. Oh, betel. M, here is your betel. And every day during M's stay at Kainchi, a different person would bring fresh betel as prasad. Maharajji had never ordered it, but in its natural course it was brought. On M's final day, he went into Maharajji's room and found him waving a flower, which M thought Maharajji would give him for his wife. M invited Maharajji to come to his home on the plains, and Maharajji said he'd come in November and bring all the Westerners. Where will they stay? Asked Maharajji. How will you arrange for their food? And M replied, They'll cook their own. With tears in his eyes, Maharajji sent M away without giving him the flower or the now customary betel. A few moments later, someone came in the room with sweet betel. Maharajji called M back. M, here's your betel for your journey. Then Maharajji gave him sweets, fruit, and the flower for his wife as well. If you desire a mango at the moment of death, you will be born an insect. If you even desire the next breath, you will take birth again. Maharajji said to Dada, who was the head of a family of devotees, You have become entirely mine. What is family to you? You are a fakir. You need only 2 chapatis a day, and those I will give you. What is attachment for the saints and Mahatmas? The family became upset at this, but Maharajji said that if Dada realized the truth of what he said, then there was no need for him to leave them. Maharajji said to a devotee, Why are you attached to this cat? I keep telling you to give up all attachments, and still you are attaching yourself to a cat. Marriage is more attachment. You need more devotion and discipline to have union with God when you are married. I was sometimes busy tending to the orchard. One day Maharajji said, "Well, that orchard belongs to me. You work like a manager. It is my property. A manager has no attachment. The moment he is turned out from a place, he will just go. So you live like a manager." Maharajji told me the following story. Samarth Guru Ramdas was the guru to the king and lived in a small mud hut next to the palace. One day, the king came out of the palace and did obeisance to the guru. Then the king handed him a scroll in which he had bequeathed all his kingdom to the guru. The guru took the scroll, read it, accepted it, and then said to the king, "Now you run it for me." He kept admonishing me, "Ramdas, give up attachments." I often tried to put the onus on him by replying, "It's all your grace." But he was reminding me that I had to make the effort, for he just kept repeating, "Give up attachments. You should have no ashrams, no attachments of any kind." Once Maharajji was reiterating to me for the 100th time that I should give up attachments. I told him that another teacher had told me the same thing. "Does he have desires?" asked Maharajji. "Yes, I think he still does," I replied. "Then how can he free you of desire?" Kali Babu told Maharajji of a utensil made of various metals that was good for keeping water and was supposed to make you healthy. Maharajji hounded him until he finally had such a utensil made. Maharajji used it all day drinking water. Then he told Kali Babu to lock it up overnight and that he would use it again the next day. Suddenly Maharajji said, "What? Am I getting attached? Give it away." One devotee said, "Was he involved with worldly matters? I don't think he had attachment for anything or anybody. He was just a mirror of your attachments." I am in the world but not concerned with the world. I am going through the marketplace but not as a purchaser. Maharajji quoting Kabir. Maharajji was totally unattached. From the moment he left Hanumangarh temple, he never repeated its name. From the moment he left Kainchi temple, he never turned to look back. "When I have left," he used to say. Temples are but piles of stones. Attachment holds you back. I don't want anything. I exist only to serve others. I had purchased a mohair blanket for Maharajji in Australia and was very excited about giving it to him. When the day for the presentation came, a group of us were ushered into the small room we humorously called his office, and we knelt before him. Somewhat pridefully, I placed the blanket on the tucket next to him, and we all waited for whatever Leela would follow. It would be fun to watch him put it on, and maybe he'd give us his old blanket, or there were 1,000 maybes. But none of our speculations prepared us for his actions. First, he ignored the blanket, then reached down and with 3 fingers picked it up as if it were a dead animal. He brought the blanket across in front of him and gave it to a woman in our group who had come to meet Maharajji for the first time. Then he turned to me and said, "Was that the right thing to do?" We were all stunned. It took me a moment to reorient, to appreciate what he had just done. Then I said, "Perfect." One devotee observed that it was not what you gave Maharajji, but the spirit with which you gave it. He could delight for a long time in something so simple as a leaf if you gave it to him from your heart. I was just saying to Maharajji that his Maya is very difficult to transcend. My father was a devoted bhakta all his life, and still he would worry about the health and welfare of his children. So I said to Maharajji, this Maya is very hard to overcome. Maharajji said four things to me. Maya, kya hai? Kahan hai? Nahi hai. Maya, what is it? Where is it? It is not. That was all. Such a peculiar day that was. It doesn't matter if you are married or not. It only matters how much you love God. Maharajji would sit out in the back in his chair, looking up at the hills, saying, look at those trees on that mountain. Who waters them? Who takes care of them? Those are the assurance that God exists for people. Those are what people can look to know about God. Maharajji had no inhibitions. He would sit sweating in the dirt. It's Mother Earth I'm sitting on, and I am made of earth, he would say. Every land is God's. It's better to see God in everything than to try to figure it out. If you have a toothache, you do what you do, but the mind remains on the tooth. A devotee asked, how can I be unattached if I have a baby? And Maharajji replied, just have faith in God and remember God, and it will happen gradually, and you will be living unattached like the lotus flower. If you're free of attachment, you will lead a simple life in a simple environment. Once Maharajji called a young Western devotee into the room with a local sadhu. The girl was dressed in a nice sari and was wearing jewelry, the sadhu in typical sadhu dress. Maharajji pointed to the Westerner and said, she's a sadhu. The sadhu objected, how can she be a sadhu? See how she is dressed. Maharajji rebuked him and said, she doesn't care for any of these things. It doesn't matter to her whether she wears silk or rags. She will even wear diamonds. She is not attached to these things. She has no lust, greed, anger, or attachment. She will wander about all her life. She has no home in the universe. Then he sent the girl out of the room. God will give you everything you need for your spiritual development. Hold on to nothing. Love the poor. Serve them. Give everything to the poor, even your clothing. Give it all away. Jesus gave away all, including his body.